All right. So good evening, everyone, or good afternoon. Welcome. On behalf of the Thoracic Surgery Medical Students Association, we are honored to host this final session in this series focused on being able to support you during one of your most pivotal milestones in your medical school journey, which is match day. So the weeks leading up to this, the rank link certification can feel both exciting and overwhelming. And there are a lot of questions about signaling, second looks, ranking decisions, often intensify during this period. So tonight's discussion is really focused on being able to provide clarity, strategy, and reassurance. It's supposed to be an organic discussion where we're able to ask questions freely. There are some pre-submitted questions from people in the audience that I will be asking of our panelists, but of course, take your time to ask anything in the chat. I'll be sure to sort of give time and space for you to ask those questions too. Again, our goal is very simple: to help you approach this final step with confidence, composure, and informed decision-making. We're very fortunate to be joined by distinguished panelists from TSDA who served in selection communities, mentored applicants, and also guided trainees through this very process. And their insights tonight will be practical, candid, and very actionable. So please pay attention, take notes. I have my notebook and pen right here. So feel free to ask all questions, and we look forward to sort of hearing this conversation. But before we begin, let's do a round of introductions. So I'll give a moment for our panelists to introduce themselves, and then we can go right ahead into our questions and conversation.
Hey, I can go first. I guess I might be the most junior of all of us, but you can never tell. So I'm Luis Godoy. I'm a general thoracic surgeon at UC Davis in Sacramento, California. A graduate of the I6 program here at UC Davis and stayed on as faculty, and now serve as the associate program director as well for our integrated program. I'll shoot it off to Dr. Yang.
Well, thanks, and thanks, Nina, and the TSMA for your kind invitation. Congratulations to everybody on their journey thus far. I'm Steve Yang. I'm a general thoracic surgeon at Johns Hopkins. I've been here for 32 years. My only job I've ever had. So I have a couple hats. As far as education is concerned, I used to be the ABTS exam chair. And I sit on the residency review committee for the ACGME, and also for, I guess, tonight's issues, I'm the president of the Thoracic Surgery Directors Association. I used to run the program here at Hopkins, and then got booted out because they wanted, no, I'm kidding. I'll turn it over to John.
Yes, hi, I'm John Karamikalis. I'm a congenital heart surgeon at Columbia University Medical Center for the last 5 years. So I'm also the associate program director of the I6 program of the adult program at Columbia University. So we kind of deal a lot with medical students and residents, and we're going through our selection procedure. So happy to be here and answer any questions and be of help to the residents. I'm sorry, to the future residents or the medical students here.
Absolutely. Future residents are on the call. So let's start off with a few questions regarding signaling and competitiveness. First question that we have here, in this competitive pathway, how does signaling realistically move the needle compared to array rotations and research productivity?
Well, I mean, I'll say the data for the signaling, I don't know how it works at each program. I mean, the data for the signaling, I mean, definitely increases your chances of getting an interview. So we're past that. Certainly it increases your chance of being, highly ranked. The data are a little fuzzy. We're still slowly getting it from the NRMP. Probably 80% chance that you'll get one of your top choices. But certainly, the signaling was started because, now that everything's pass fail, it's really hard to get an idea how all of the candidates are, certainly signaling, or maybe you'll talk about this later. If you've done a sub-I there, certainly increases your ability, to match there. Certainly the interview is critical, and how they all feel about you. And then, I think the signaling does, play a part, especially, since there's you only get 3 signals for the integrated pathway.
Yeah, I want to reiterate one thing that Dr. Yang mentioned is that the signaling plays a bigger role in the pre-interview phase, because especially in the era of like virtual interviews, and a lot of programs are still doing virtual interviews. It's a way, in programs that have a limited amount of interviews they can extend. It's a way that they can then narrow down the interview offers for people that have signaled an interest in their program. So otherwise, you get hundreds of applications because it's not costing anybody anything to like zoom into an interview. But it's a way to like narrow down the applicant pool to those who have shown interest. And usually that plays a bigger role in the pre-interview phase. I think once you've actually interviewed at a program, I think at that point it doesn't really play much of a role. At that point, once you've made it to the interview, it's more of how you performed during the interview, your letters of rec, and your basically your academic resume at that point. So.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you, Louis, on signaling being important in the virtual or era, but once you get to the interviews in person, then probably plays less of a role.
Awesome. Another question I'm seeing here, does demonstrated longitudinal interest in CT surgery meaningfully affect how applicants are ranked from your side of things?
From our standpoint, yes, I think that's one of the big things, when you're reviewing an application, somebody who's shown dedication and commitment over time, I think it definitely plays a role in the decision. Rather, somebody who hasn't shown any interest in CT surgery and then, eventually during their application, or the application cycle, they decide to apply without having any demonstrated interest. Cardiac and thoracic surgery, it's a challenging training program to go through. And so you want to have somebody who kind of knows what they're kind of getting into. So to minimize the risk of having somebody to basically bite off more than they can chew and end up like dropping out, and then a program has now lost a spot, for example, which is not a benign thing for programs. So definitely expressed interest and demonstrated interest over the course of time longitudinally really does add value to the application.
Yeah, I can comment on this. I mean, long-standing interest in the field definitely plays a role, but assuming though that you're showing consistent perseverance is important, but consistent progress and it's also important too. So you can start, you can have a long history of interest, but we have to see progression of that and performance. So just interest alone is a prerequisite, but it doesn't get you to the actual residency on its own. So we have to have other things on top.
Yeah, I don't want to be the glass half empty type of person. I've had several students who, I swore would have done cardiothoracic, and they worked with me for a couple of years and they ended up not doing it. So yes, obviously it helps you a lot. But at the same time, interests may change, your families change, life changes. So, we're seeing a bit of attrition from the integrated programs. So, I want to, again, I want to say it's never too late. I mean, you're matching into integrated programs now, but, certainly you should do what's right for you. So if you get to a program and you find that, well, this isn't really what I really expected it to be, then, it's difficult to change and it's a little embarrassing, but you can change. So it's not it's never too late.
Absolutely. Another question that I'm seeing in the chat, is there public data by program on case volume?
I can take that. I'm not sure there's public data, but the data of the volume, at least in our program, at the interviews, we put them up for the residents or the applicants to see. So that data is important. And when a program presents that data and it's transparent, doesn't matter what the numbers are, just the fact that they're presenting it is a great sign. So I would think that's a positive plus for that program. But I don't know if it's publicly available, like on websites perhaps. But our practice has always been to put those numbers up.
Yeah, I don't think there's like a public reporting for case volume. But by all means, if you're interested in a program and at the day of your interview, if for some reason they don't display the volume, then that's a good question to ask, during your interview. For the most part, most programs will in the opening presentation with the program director will review case volumes and the types of cases and all of that. But if for some reason they don't, which I would find kind of odd, just that's like a good question to ask, during the interview.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. So, just be careful. It's not all about the volume. So, you shouldn't compare institution by institution. This one does 1,500 cases and this one only does 1,000. All programs are certified by the ACGME, so they've met a minimum requirement. So the important thing is that you get enough cases to get certified. You sit for your boards, and again, if you should know that there's 3 different pathways. There's cardiothoracic pathways, the general thoracic pathway, and there's a cardiac pathway. So all the programs are can be different. So if there's a program that's heavy in cardiac, okay, well, they may not do as many thoracic cases, they may not see as many esophagectomies, but they're certified by the ACGME to have a residency program because they've met the minimum requirements, as opposed to going to a very heavy program, cancer-based program, which will be very busy in lung and esophagus, and you may get a few months of cardiac. So just be careful about the case volume thing. Again, as everyone has said, you should have that when you do the interview. If you don't have it by now, then maybe they may be hiding something. So make sure that you get that information.
Absolutely. Our next question that we're looking here, I think we're shifting over to second looks. How do you guys advise students to sort of go about assessing culture and operative dynamics within the different programs that you're overseeing and in general across the nation?
So,
I can take.
okay,
Go
sure.
on.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, with the it's become harder as an applicant to try to get a feel for a program that you've interviewed at virtually, And I know our program has still done virtual. We have not resumed in-person interviews, so it can be a challenge to kind of gauge the facility, the atmosphere, the collegiality with the residents and your peers. I'd say that's probably one of the biggest downsides of the whole virtual interview thing. But going to places that offer like second looks, I think that's a good way to actually go and visit an institution that you're interested in. For the most part, though, you'll come in and meet with some of the faculty, and then basically like shadow for part of the day, and you can meet the residents, and you kind of get a feel for the institution. Um, Not all places offer second looks, but if there's a program that you're like definitely interested in, you haven't visited and you kind of want to you know you're like on the fence as to where you're going to rank them, then it might not be a bad idea to see if they do offer a second look in order to go and just get that last piece of the puzzle to see if that's somewhere you want to spend your training.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll say as well that, there's formal second looks and there's informal second looks. I mean, to really get the culture, just stay with one of the residents. You go there and, you know, move in with them for a day or two and really get to know them. And, the culture you can pretty much tell, hopefully with the first interview, how the residents get together and whether they like each other. I think that's probably one of the most important things is how happy the residents are and how do they interact with each other. No, again, it's very difficult to do by Zoom. I think in person will give you a vast amount of information, and I think most of the residents would welcome you to stay with them. Obviously for financial issues, but really, you get to see what they're like, and is this the program for you, and sort of you get those nuts and bolts that Nina had said about culture and how the place works.
No, I agree with both of my colleagues here. Second looks can help, but also informal talks with residents and reputation across the country for different programs can also give you some tips of what's happening in those places. But second looks or more in-person visits help to understand those things and the dynamics within the program.
And following up to that question, in terms of being able, oh, go ahead, Dr. Yang. Oh, to be able to gauge operative autonomy and mentorship, how should students go about that as well? Talking to residents, I hear, is there anything else they should do to sort of understand how they would be basically trained and being able to do operations to gain confidence and being able to do things on their own?
Definitely talking to the current residents. That'll give you the best assessment as to their operative autonomy and their progression. And ultimately it's like a graduated autonomy, so they're talking to the residents at different levels of their training, is good.
Yeah, I can add a couple comments. Graduates of the program also, or recent graduates, is where they have the complete experience is probably another good resource for information regarding the experience that they were getting, and more the senior residents as well would give you where they are closing to the completion of the program. Then they can give you a very good impression or a very good idea of how the program works, the responsibilities, the operative experience. But I think recent graduates is a good resource of information.
Okay.
Yeah, I would also say that I don't know if it's happened at you all's program as well. Some of the residents are getting a little bit, they're curious at what level they should be at with each progressing year. So it's not we've talked about progressive responsibility. Let's say like I'm just going to throw a year out. So by year 5, you should be able to open a chest cannulate and have some sort of metrics. I'm just going to put a plug in for my EPA. So I'm running. I'm in charge of the EPAs for the American Board of Thoracic Surgery, and so these will be rolling out probably in August this year. nationally. So hopefully this will help with some of the objective ways of measuring how far you're progressing. So again, it's important, like my colleagues say, talk to the seniors, talk to the graduating folks, and also get the data where the graduating residents are going. I mean, do they have to go do a super fellowship for, I'm just throwing in cabbages, or a super fellowship for doing esophagectomies? If they have to do that, then there's a problem with the program. If they're going to do a super fellowship in transplant, well, that's certainly something totally different, because they may not have gotten enough transplant experience. So you have to get a gauge of what those graduating residents are doing as they leave the programs. Now, like top academic centers like San Diego and Columbia, they probably are practice ready, but again, they may want to do something very, very specialized. That's different than just doing another super fellowship here because they didn't get enough mitros.
Absolutely. And I think it's really important to sort of make sure that students understand that progressive responsibility and what they need to do at each level in each year. And having students and residents who are available to speak on those things are really essential for being able to envision what the next 7 to 10 years of your life might look like, especially if you pursue fellowships and whatnot. There are a few questions in the chat about some things that were touched on earlier, so I'll just go through them here. One question is about the longitudinal interest in CT surgery. So what are some ways medical students can show dedication to CT surgery? This person is asking as a previous ICU RN with post-op CABG experience.
Well, I just ran into a young woman who was in the ICU here. She was a nurse, and she went back to med school. And she's interested in integrated pathways. So I think we've touched upon it earlier. These longitudinal interests, whether it's in research or getting involved with some of the activities like this one. I would say there's a number of scholarships out there. STS Looking to the Future, the ATS Member for a Day. There was a scholarship at the Southern. So there's a number of scholarships out there that you can get involved with, and research opportunities. Just put another mindless plug for I wrote an article about 3 years ago about all the scholarships that are available for medical students. And so, if you want to get involved early, you don't have any mentorship or access to CT surgery at your own institution, there's a number of ways nationally to get involved.
Okay. Another question that I'm seeing here, do you suggest letting the program you're highly ranking know that you're really interested in matching there, even if they're not your #1 program? Should students do that for their top 3 programs, for example?
I can take that briefly. I think it's a great idea to express interest. I think you're only allowed to say you're ranking #1 only one program. So, but if you're truly interested, you should express your interest, because that counts. But I mean,
Absolutely.
don't just say the same thing to everyone. I would just try to gauge which program you really like, and then just express your honest interest.
I agree 100%. And to reiterate, it's if you have your #1 program and you want to let them know they're #1, that's great. Go ahead and do so, but just make sure that you do it to only that one program, because it's a small field. People talk to each other, programs talk to each other. If you send that same email to 10 different programs, people will eventually find out. So yeah, you can express interest to your #1, let them know. I would say, if you have your top 3 programs, sending a message demonstrating your interest, I think is also appropriate. So I agree with what was said.
Okay. Next question that I'm seeing here. Someone is asking if you could still need to signal a program if you do it in a way there.
I think by the fact that you did in a way, shows your interest, the fact that you're dedicating, a 4 week block of time at the institution. In that case, I would say it would be wise to save that signal for like maybe another program because by doing your away or your sabai there, you're already demonstrating interest. You're demonstrating enough interest to actually go there and spend time and work and incorporate yourself into the teams. I don't think you necessarily need to signal that program. I think it's more of an implied signal that you're, taking the time to come out.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, that's how, again, I don't know if you have to signal your own program, where you're at. I think that's all, it's an assumption that you're interested in staying unless you specifically say not to. I think we've told students, do not signal your sub-Is, do not signal your own program. Certainly if you're away, you did an away rotation, you should meet with the program director before you leave and have like an exit interview, with them.
Next question that I'm seeing here is what qualities besides interest would make an applicant stand out in the pre-interview phase, that is to receive an interview?
I can start that question. We usually look at special pathway, kind of some uniqueness to the pathway the medical student came to apply to surgery or to cardiothoracic surgery. So and the students that stood out is they come up with some lifetime event that kind of shaped their pathway through. So that's something that we see commonly, at least here in Colombia, but in general, I think makes the students come up, stand out more. So something unique, whatever that might be, a life story of why they ended up selecting to choose, to this pathway. And so that's.
Yeah, when I meet with students that are applying not only for CT surgery but for other programs, that's what I tell them is that um, your board scores or your pass fail is already set in stone. Your grades are already set in stone. Your 30 rotations are already kind of set in stone. The areas where you can really make an impact are, like your personal statement. You know, what made you choose, CT surgery is one of the important things. But also just what sets you apart, what makes you unique. You can, in this era where everybody's doing research early, everybody's got publications, everybody has good mentors. Like, what really sets you apart? Like, what shows that you have the determination to complete your training. Those things I think are important. I particularly like people who have had like other jobs, who have had some kind of job, and I like to talk to people about the kind of work that they did, and you can learn a lot about a person by the type of job that they've done and how long they did it, and then how they got along with their boss and their coworkers, right? So just anything that kind of really sets you apart and allows us to get to know you a little bit better than the academic application, because most of the applications are very similar. So really, like, what sets you apart, I think, is important.
Yeah, I sort of hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm sure everyone knows about the recent anti-diversity movement And so, how that spilled over is that all the program directors now have to have very specific metrics. This is sort of a government requirement. So, at least for our program, we had to get, I think we had like 25 metrics that we had to write down and get it approved by our GME, graduate medical education dean, to satisfy all of the national requirements. And yeah, again, the demographics do play an important part. Everything that Luis and John's mentioned is important. How you can, I think, move the needle toward your favor is all the research and getting interested, and what you've done in a gap year, or did you get an extra degree? And if you have really pretty good finite plans in the future. Again, what I've been told is that if you did not get an interview, you get some sort of feedback on why you didn't get an interview, because of all of these national metrics that have been set up in response to this new administration. And so again, it's a little bit different now. The sort of the days of Luis calling me up and saying, "Hey, I got this guy here I want you to interview." Can't really do that anymore unless we have very specific reasons and why we should interview that person. So it has got a little bit more objective, unfortunately. And so, those are the times we live in. So just so you all know that it's, the selection process for interviews has gotten to be a little bit, more difficult. And then just have a couple piles, we're going to interview these, but it's gotten to be an objective measurement, and then above this cut line, you get an interview. So.
Things are changing. Things are definitely changing exponentially. Another question I'm seeing here is, are applicants without any research gaps years disadvantaged in any way, based on those metrics that you just talked about, Dr. Yang, or anyone else from their perspective?
I've seen some applicants come through without like dedicated like research years. And everybody's situation is a little bit different, and some people don't have like the financial resources to extend their medical school for an extra year to take a research year, or if they don't have funding or a grant from somewhere, it can be a challenge, but some people, I'd say, that have shown determination have been people that have been able to do research concurrently with their education. And I know, since I have to say, since step one became pass fail, you tend to see people seeking research opportunities very early on, MS1 levels looking for research opportunities, because they know that the sooner they get in on projects, the sooner they can become productive, and then they can include that in the application. So yeah, it's gotten tougher to like Dr. Yang mentioned, it's really gotten really tough to select applicants. I mean, everybody's so competitive now. They come in with tons of publications. But yeah, not everybody's taking dedicated like 1 or 2 year research, in order to accomplish it.
Yeah, I can add our perspective on this. Most of the students that are, strong candidates have done research. They haven't necessarily taken time off, but even though maybe half of them have, but even the ones that haven't have a lot of involvement with research projects earlier on and published quite extensively. And it's more and more I'm impressed by a lot of these medical students' hard work during their, medical school years. So it's not absolutely necessary to take the year off, even though that helps a lot. But it is important to have those, publications and the research work and letters from your mentors. And a lot of them come from research work.
I see a follow-up question to that. Is there a specific number of research involvements or publications that you're looking for? And is the expectation higher for those who take a gap year?
I can answer. I can take this first. Yes, we do score the number of research publications you have. Whether you have a PhD or not, also that gets a score. But yes, the short answer is it does count, and it counts in the scoring or where we place the resident in terms of competitiveness to invite them for an interview, but also when it comes to ranking them, that will play a role. It depends on what kind of program you're aiming. If you're aiming at highly academic programs, then it will make a lot of difference. And so that's, yeah, that's something to pay importance, that pay attention to.
Yeah, and it also depends on the quality of the projects that you've worked on and how well you can talk about those projects and how well you know the actual topic that you published on. And then the other thing is, if you've done poster presentations, you've gone to conferences and things like that, all of those things, add up in an application.
Yeah, I mean, again, number isn't everything. The CV, the weight of the CV or the number of pages of the CV isn't important. I mean, if you have one paper in New England Journal, that certainly outweighs like 5 papers and some smaller journal that you've never heard of before. So it's all a bit relative. And I think we talked about this earlier with the gap year. Make sure you've accomplished something with that year. And at least I hear some students, they take a gap year because they want to study and get good scores on their shelf exams, their board exams, and so it's a bit of a wasted year. And if you don't do research, make sure it's a useful year, as I think my colleagues have already talked about. I mean, if you've done something really fantastic, volunteering, going overseas, and doing global surgery, or then wow, that's incredible. There's no time for research. So I won't say that research is everything. Certainly, if your CV doesn't have anything and have that sort of wow factor, then you should have some research there.
This is really good content, guys. I hope you guys are all taking notes. I love these words of wisdom. For those aiming for academic CT surgery, for example, how important is research infrastructure in the residency level? And can you guys speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I want to say if you're interested in ultimately becoming an academic surgeon and you want to do research or continue some research, then it's important to ask those questions, like if there is dedicated research time, can you add like a research year, 1 or 2 years? Some of our residents here have taken, 1 to 2 years to do research. Is there funding to do research? If there's ongoing projects that are going on that you kind of want to take on and lead. So all of those things are good to ask programs if research is something that's very important to you, to know up front if you're going to have those resources to do so.
Yeah, especially, I mean, you should get it early now because again, some of the government issues, budget cuts, not as much research funding. Do you want to get a degree? Want to get your master's, MPH? you can put a plug for education when you get a master's in education. There's you want to get a PhD. Obviously that will take some planning and some funding support for it. Some of our national organizations do have some resources. So I'd highly suggest that you go to the websites of the major organizations, STS, ATS, Thoracic Surgery Foundation, a number of resources for research support, and try to get it done early. I mean, it does. If you're going to wait till after second or third year residency, you better start in your first year. Don't wait till the year that you're going to go out to start looking for, research support, because it may be a little bit too late. So your program director should know this. So once you matriculate into your residency program, I would certainly talk to your program director as soon as you can and say, I'm thinking about doing research between my, second, third, fourth year. What do I need to do to get ready for that? Okay, because research funding is so tight now.
Moving right on ahead and switching topics a little bit based on this question. Wondering for thoracic surgery interested applicants who want to do general surgery residency, how do I navigate my entrance in CT surgery with both integrated and general surgery programs? Hopefully this person hopes that you guys can speak about that.
That is a $1 million question. I mean, I don't know if we have any great answers for that. Unfortunately, if you've already decided you want to go into CT surgery, the your general surgery program directors are going to read right through that and they'll ask you why. So you have to come up with a good reason why. The usual answers may not fly anymore, like, oh, I want to get a well-rounded general surgery experience. So it is a very difficult issue to tiptoe around. I mean, I'm sure Luis and John have some other ideas, but you got to be honest and say, but you can't say at the same time we're using general surgery as a backup. Certainly, I think it's a little easier. I'll just put a plug in for general thoracic. I think it's great to have general surgery background. I mean, a lot of the things we do in thoracic surgery, we need to have general surgery techniques. I need to know the biology of the disease. I need to learn how to lead a team. And it may be that, you're not totally sold on CT surgery yet. You can talk to some of your other colleagues who did get into an I6 program and say, how do you navigate between a general surgery interview and a CT surgery interview? And we've talked about this at the general surgery program directors as well. So it's really hard for them because they want to pick the best people, and there are sometimes they do try to wean you toward general surgery away from CT surgery. So they have a bit of a underlying goal. So, but see what Luis and John.
Yeah, so for applicants into an like an I6 program, like we basically expect folks, because of the competitive nature and the limitations and spots and how many are available every year, we basically expect applicants to apply to general surgery as well, because like I said, like what has been mentioned, there's multiple routes to CT surgery. It's not always reciprocated from our general surgery colleagues, because it's difficult for them to review an application that's basically all cardiac surgery, and then for them to give up their spot, somebody who's got demonstrated cardiac surgery can be a challenge. With that being said, it's oftentimes recommended to basically have like almost like two applications, one that you have letters of rec and and everything is kind of geared towards the CT surgery programs, and then another one with maybe a different set of letters of rec that are geared more towards your general surgery programs. Like I said, I6 programs are we like I said, we expect people to apply to general surgery. And as somebody mentioned it at the STS during our Look into the Futures is, if you don't apply it to general surgery, then people start to wonder like how arrogant is this person thinking that they're gonna be hands down I6 matriculant. So yeah, it's I know it's difficult for folks because it is basically like having almost two applications, which can be quite daunting for folks.
Yeah, I can add, I echo everything that's been said on the topic. It is advisable to apply to general surgery programs at the same time as the I6. Now, what proportion or ratio you use, it's, up to what your confidence or comfort level is, and also what your interest is. Um, Going to general surgery, you can track into the cardiac surgery early, or you can finish and then do, you know, the traditional cardiothoracic fellowship. There are top programs like the Mass General. They don't have I6, I believe, and they have like an integrated program. So my experience is that most of the people, obviously at Columbia, we only have an I6 program, but many of the applicants I see also apply to general surgery, and it is a wise step or move to include general surgery, good good general surgery programs. No matter how confident you are, you're going to match into an I6. And the jury is still out whether I6 is superior to the traditional pathway. I mean, obviously, we are leaning more towards I6, but so my advice is to keep the general surgery in as part of your kind of applications, apply to general surgery, um, at least to some extent.
I mean, it also helps if that program has a 4-3 program. So you could say, well, I want to get into your program one way or the other, do I6 or 4-3. Usually with the 4-3s, you match into general surgery, and then they'll pick somebody to finish the 4-3 track. So I'll tell it to John's comment. I know some of the board data that the integrated programs, the residents pass their boards a little higher than traditional.
That's a great follow-up to our next question here. How do you feel I6 graduates currently fare compared to general surgery trained CT surgeons when it comes to job and leadership opportunities?
That's a great question. You'll have mixed answers. A good resident is a good resident, whether they come through I6 or general surgery. If they're strong candidates, if they're strong residents, they'll ace through whether it's I6 or general surgery. So I don't know if there's a good answer to that, but I think you can shine through both pathways. Um, I'm maybe a bit biased because I've done the traditional pathway, or most of us have. Uh, so a tailored approach and having a mentor earlier on, even if you're going through general surgery, if you have a cardiac surgeon or thoracic surgeon or congenital cardiac, if that's your interest, it can actually help a lot, and you can get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, and also know that a lot of it is based on the actual individual. There's people that have gone through I6 programs that like was mentioned earlier, still may need to go out and do like a super fellowship because they're not comfortable on going out on their own and practice right away. And then there's been some people that have gone through the traditional track where they do, general surgery, and then and then after only 2 years of CT surgery, are fully capable of doing major complex cases. It all depends on what you make out of your training and your learning. How a lot of it just relies on the individual as well, because some people can pick it up in 2 years, and some people need even after 6 years need a little extra help. So it just depends. And the long term data for like I6 programs, I guess since they're like the newer of the programs, whether it's better than the general surgery or the traditional track, it's still who's to say at this point, but it ultimately, like I said, it just depends on the individual as well.
Well, I mean, I train traditional, but I'll say, I6 programs are 20 years old now this year. So it's not,
Oh,
everybody
yeah,
keeps
I guess.
they actually started 2006, so they're it's got some track record. But I think most of the students know that I6 is 90% going to cardiac. Um, you can do general thoracic if you go to the right integrated program. But then I think I feel you do need a good, very good general surgery background um, to do general thoracic. So 4-3 or traditional is the best. And just remember that, unfortunately, again, this is just the generic comment is that, you go to the integrated programs and you're not going to be at the mothership to do general surgery. A lot of programs struggle trying to get enough numbers for you to do your cases. So they'll put you wherever, private practice, affiliated hospitals. Again, I don't know what you all do. I don't want to speak for Luis and John, but at least the feedback that I get from integrated programs is that it is a struggle to find general surgery cases for you your first 2 years. And they're not at the mothership, so you're not operating with the world-class people who do Whipples all the time.
Yeah, most of ours do a combination of private practice, VA. We send our residents, so it's a combination, and then some do some of their general surgery rotations here, but for the most part, the majority of it comes from those outlying hospitals.
Okay. We are now 7 minutes onto the hour. We have one more question before final comments. So I'll ask this question now. Since third-year grading is not pass-fail at many schools, are there particular aspects of third-year performance that stand out to you when reviewing applicants?
I can start with that. So, I mean, we look at Dean's letter for sure, and we try to see a lot of the Dean's letters are standardized and they say a lot of the same stuff, but you're trying to actually dig into details of what they might mention something specifically for that student. So we pay attention to that, and then uh, we also look at the grades, and we're looking for high honors or high passing grades or for the specialty. So those are kind of things that differentiate the residents, the medical students that we will be interested in. So.
Yeah, we do the same at UC Davis as well. Look at the Dean's letter, and then we look at the third year grading. Specifically looking at things like the surgery rotation, and then which oftentimes the rotations that the student has done and the grading that they've done. Did they get honors, pass? Obviously a no pass is not going to be good if they failed, but we do pay attention to those.
And also the USMLE scores, I should add that. So we do pay attention to that.
Yeah.
All right. I know, Dr. Yang, you wanted to ask a question before we close.
Yeah, so I've turned the tables really quickly as a sort of a follow-up to that question. So it's always been, as I said earlier, we have some issues that everything's pass fail. It's, how do you stand out? I think all the questions have been focused around that. And hopefully people online will maybe vote. So how many of you here, I'd be interested to hear Luis and John's comments. How many of you here would participate in a skills test assessment? So as you apply for integrated programs, there's a skills assessment, not a test, but an assessment of your skills. And if you were graded in AI, would you be willing to participate in that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Steve. And we actually we actually give the medical students a clinical question, a scenario during the interview. So we kind of try and test them in some way or another. And so that's something that and we get the feedback from everyone, including the residents and the faculty as well. So we have joint sessions between all of them.
Well, I see overwhelming support from. Well, I mean, the reason I ask this is that, there's a couple institutions which sort of, they do a skills test when you go there and you do something. And I appreciate John's question, John's comment about, clinical questions. And, I'm thinking about this. I'm just trying to, figure, again, it's not a test, it's just more of an assessment. Certainly, if you want to be a surgeon, you should have certain skills when you apply, and then we would sort of standardize it as part of a, I don't want to say a score, but at least you have some basic skills assessment, as you're applying. So, well, more to come on that. I just, I'm glad to see there's some support for it.
Well, one thing, I remember when I was a fourth year and I was interviewing, I interviewed at a program. This is, back in the days of in-person interviews. And when you're sitting in a conference room with all the other applicants, I remember them breaking us up into groups and giving us tasks like, oh, here, while you guys are waiting, why don't you guys do this, right? So it wasn't until afterwards that they're like, oh yeah, we pay attention to how you perform there too,
Yeah,
how
I
you
mean, I don't think
coordinate,
it,
how you
again, I don't
coordinated
think
the
it's
team.
fair.
Yeah, yeah. Who
I
did
don't think it's
what?
fair. Some places do it and some places don't. And
Yeah.
sort of, one of my tasks for the TSDA now is actually to decide if we should have some sort of assessment piece, for the integrated.
Mm-hmm.
More
Yeah,
to,
overwhelming support here.
yeah, I know. Everyone raised their hands.
Exciting things on the horizon we hear. Really great work. I guess in terms, as we are closing up, I kind of want to give a few seconds for you guys to share words of wisdom. Imagine yourself, future resident, about to apply, going to second looks and things of that nature. What advice would you give the next generation of CT surgeons?
So one thing that I'll start off is, at this point, you've done your interviews, you got your rank list. Um, you've finished your electives. Some people take time off towards the end of the year, since they've done everything that's required, is to just basically just take this time from when you submit your application to just take time for yourself, relax. Residency is hard for everybody, even if you went into a pediatric, right? Pediatric residency is going to be hard. But just take this time, once you have all your chips on the table, and you're kind of locked and loaded, then just take that time to kind of just enjoy the remaining months of your fourth year that are, the stress levels and everything like that are like behind you. And that's just smooth sailing. Take that time to enjoy yourself and spend with your family and re-nourish, your body and your mind and everything in preparation of training at the program of your choice.
I would say similarly, but you guys are the best and the brightest, and match day comes, and there's going to be a lot of like tears of joy and tears of sadness, but things happen for a reason, and it's you're splitting hairs right now, trying to decide which place to go to. So make sure, A, you rank the places that you would go to. Don't rate places that you don't want to go to. And then whatever happens on match day, enjoy the moment. There's a power and a force above us that said that's the place for you, and enjoy it. Don't be too disappointed, and it'll work out. Just remember that day. It's one of those momentous days in your life that you'll always remember where you were and what happened.
Yeah, I can give a brief comment too in closing. So I would urge the medical students just to take a deep breath and relax, and just when you're ranking, I would kind of take an honest view of what is your best match program for you. Where do you think you'll perform the best? Not what the reputation of that program is in general. Like, don't rank based on names, because on reputation alone. Just try to think hard which one you would get the best training, which one you'd be most comfortable with, and that's essentially the best program for you. So that's the way I kind of view these things.
Well, thank you so much. As we close tonight's session, we want to highlight this repeating pattern that we're seeing in all the discussions that we've had over the course of the past hour. The match in itself is not about perfection. We've been talking about moments of alignment, being able to ensure that you trust the years and decades of work that you accomplished over the course of your lifetime, basically. So as people have already emphasized, rank your programs in the order where you believe you will grow, be supported and thrive. Trust the work that you've done, trust the preparation that you've poured into, the people, the families, and the villages that help bring you to where you are in that very moment. And most importantly, trust the environment that will help cultivate the surgeon in you in terms of how you want to sort of give back to the patient populations that you want to serve. So on behalf of TSMA, I want to send a heartfelt thank you to Dr. Yang, Dr. Karen McAllis, as well as Dr. Godoy for their transparency, their mentorship, and thank each and every one of our audience for all of their inquisitive questions. It was so thoughtful, so comprehensive, just being able to go through the spreadsheet and sort of see the interest and the enthusiasm and engagement from each and every one of you guys. We're so thankful and very hopeful for the next generation of CT surgeons based on your interest and willingness to engage in this evening session on a Wednesday night. So we really look forward to sort of seeing all of your successes on X and Twitter and everything on match day. Congratulations for getting this far. And thank you again to our panelists for your time and your evening this evening.